Hi everyone, Jane here. Welcome back to my garden. So last week, my family and I went on a little trip down to Southern California. Our main goal for going down there was actually to go to Harry Potter World for my daughters, who are 9 and 11 and obsessed with Harry Potter, of course. And we went to Universal Studios to see Harry Potter World, and it was amazing. It was so much fun. We had the best time. The day that we were driving back home, though, I talked my family into stopping by one public garden that I've been itching to go to for years, and that is the Huntington Botanical Garden in San Marino, California. It's about a 130-acre garden, which is it's huge. It's absolutely huge, and it's divided up into different themed gardens. I think they have 13 themed gardens, and it did not disappoint. It was so incredibly beautiful, you guys. Unfortunately, we only had a couple hours there, so we couldn't see the entire garden, but we got to see probably about half of it. And so I did take some footage. I do have to admit that I was completely taken aback by the beauty of the gardens, and so I was more focused on looking at the gardens rather than filming the gardens, but I think I did a pretty good job bringing together the video so you all could get a good idea of what the Huntington Botanical Garden is like. So let's take a look. Our first stop was the Camellia Garden. It is a historic collection of over 1,200 cultivated varieties of camellia. Now, normally peak bloom time for the Camellia Garden is January and February. So I wasn't sure if we were going to get any of a show, but late March, they were still going strong and they were absolutely beautiful. My entire family was speechless as we walked around looking at the 1,200 different cultivated varieties of camellias. And the most wonderful thing was they were very, very mature, full grown. Some of them were young, but most of them were just this beautiful specimen. It was absolutely stunning. Now, Nuccio's camellias, which I've talked about a lot, they are pretty local to the Huntington Garden, and they did have a lot of selection of Nuccio's camellias, but along with other varieties as well. And it was just so neat to see because apparently a lot of these varieties are very rare and very historic. I don't know enough about camellias to be able to appreciate the rarity of all of these varieties, but it was really fun to see. Another really fun thing in this shady part of the garden was the Clivia that was on just an amazing show. And normally Clivia is orange, but they had this supernova in a yellow color that was just absolutely beautiful, and I want to add it to my garden. Next up on our garden tour was the Shakespeare Garden. Yes, there is an entire themed garden dedicated to the works of William Shakespeare. I just thought this was the most romantic garden. It was absolutely beautiful, and it had been tended to beautifully. That's one thing I did notice at the Huntington Garden is that, man, they really do a good job with their plants. So in the Shakespeare Garden, there are plants that are mentioned in his plays and sonnets, and there's different plaques that tell you the quote from his plays. For example, the pomegranate tree from Romeo and Juliet, the rose from Othello. It was just so fun to see. There are also plants that were cultivated in England during his time, and also many plants whose ancestors trace back to the plants of his Renaissance writings. So it was a very, very fun English type garden with foxgloves and with viburnum. There was heliotrope, my favorite there. There was osteospermum. It was just absolutely the most romantic garden that I've seen in a very, very long time. We were so lucky to be there at the time when the euphorbia was in full bloom, along with the wisteria. Oh my goodness, you guys. This wisteria was heaven. It smelled so good. This was a white specimen that I just couldn't get over. I just couldn't get over how beautiful it was. They also had the purple wisteria, of course, but it was pruned into this little lollipop tree, and it was just absolutely a showstopper. Another plant that was in bloom at the time all over the botanical gardens was the echium. They had Pride of Madeira all over the place, and it was just absolutely beautiful. I have just recently planted this in my garden, and I cannot wait for it to mature and bloom because it is really, really gorgeous. We did get a chance to go to the famous rose garden. It's a 3-acre garden containing more than 2,500 individual plants. Now, unfortunately, only one of the roses were in bloom at the time, but you could get an idea of how absolutely gorgeous this would be during peak bloom season. It really, I'm sure, is a sight to see, and I would love to go back and visit. I had to show you all how beautifully trained this climbing rose was up this tour. I have some work to do back at my own garden. Now, located just next to the rose garden was probably my favorite garden in the whole botanical gardens, and that was the herb garden. The herb garden was laid out in a parterre form with different beds. It was constructed in the 1970s, and it contains many herbs and spices that you would use not only in cooking, but also in perfumes, in tinctures, and then also something I learned is that they had plants in a bed that was called the Tussie Mussy bed. And Tussie Mussies are small handheld bouquets of scented flowers and herbs that have special meanings for the recipients. So for an example, if you were to give someone a Tussie Mussy of borage, it would mean bluntness, while if you were to give a Tussie Mussy of sweet alyssum, it would mean worth beyond beauty. So I just thought that was really fun, and I kind of want my own Tussie Mussy bed in my garden. The herb garden was located right next to the tea house. There was kind of a little cafe restaurant that you could make reservations for tea, afternoon tea, and we didn't get a chance to do that, but my goodness, I would absolutely love to have the opportunity to have tea overlooking the herb garden. It also overlooks the rose garden, which is where I think it's located for, but of course the roses weren't in bloom yet, so I was really appreciating this herb garden. And I have to say, the scent when we were walking around here was intoxicating. It was absolutely incredible. I couldn't help myself from touching every single plant, and it just stuck with me for the rest of the day. After the herb and rose garden, we made our way to the Japanese garden. I had no idea what we were in for when we walked through the gates. This Japanese garden I have no words. It is absolutely stunning. It is iconic. We had just come from Universal Studios, an amusement park in Southern California, where everything is really beautiful there, but it's all fake. In this Japanese garden, everything was so beautiful and it was all real. It was located in this bit of a valley of the botanical gardens, and at the bottom of the valley is kind of like a pond, a koi pond, and it had this moon bridge that was the most beautiful, beautiful thing. All of the plants there were meticulously shorn and bonsai'd, and it, like every square inch of this garden, they had paid attention to. There was wisteria blooming at the time, which we were so lucky to be there at the time. There was a couple of houses, Japanese houses, that unfortunately I don't know much about. One of them was closed, so we weren't able to see what's called the Shoya house, which is the residence. But there was a Japanese house and there was a ceremonial tea house. Also in the Japanese garden, there was a Zen garden, a Zen court with the raked gravel. And I've never really appreciated seeing these before, but after seeing this one, I got it. It was so calming and so peaceful in this court, and it was absolutely beautiful. You could hear a pin drop. We were outside, there was plenty of people around, and you could hear a pin drop. It was really, really amazing. So apparently since 1990, the Huntington has served as the Southern California site for the Golden State Bonsai Federation. They have hundreds of bonsais on display, and they are absolutely beautiful. I was so lucky to be able to be there when they were tending to the bonsais, and we were just watching these gentlemen with little tweezers just fixing their bonsais, just pinching off these tiny, tiny, tiny leaves just to work on their hundreds of years old bonsais. It was absolutely incredible. Lucky that is to see that in bloom.
Look at the trunk. It's like all worn down. It's still alive. It's so pretty. That's amazing.
Next on our visit was the Chinese garden. This is apparently a classical style Chinese garden of 15 acres, you guys. It was absolutely amazing. The vistas around this pond were incredible. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't spend a lot of time there because the girls at this point were getting very, very hungry and we had to go to lunch. But oh my goodness, I could just imagine spending an entire day in this Chinese garden. They were filled with these super interesting rocks. They're stones that are found in China that are harvested for their interesting forms. So it was really, really fun to see. On our way to lunch, we had the opportunity to walk through the California garden, which was an alley lined with olive trees. There was echium, there was Kniphofia, there was aloe that was in bloom. It was a sight to see. But of course, we had to go get some food. Then after that, we made our way to the famous children's garden. This children's garden, oh my goodness. This is the reason why I wanted to visit the Huntington Garden. This structure that's covered with foliage, it just spoke to me. This is actually what I wanted to do instead of my gazebo in the front yard, but we decided that it would be a little bit more practical to have a gazebo. But this structure really speaks to me, and I would have just loved to have this as a kid as my playhouse. It was just it was so magical and so fun. So this children's garden invites kids to get out there and imagine and play. There's topiaries, there's interactive sculptures, there's fountains that spurt out water at random times that kind of scare you. It's just so much fun. There was this weeping, I think it's a weeping cherry tree that was all intertwined together to make one big, almost gazebo out of a tree. And then, of course, there was this very, very tall, almost like a cave dome structure that the kids could climb on and feel like they were on the top of the world. It was just absolutely incredible. It was a really, really fun place to be, and what a fun place to be a kid. Our last stop before we had to leave and go home was the Conservatory. The Conservatory is a 1,600 square foot greenhouse that is comprised of 3 different habitats: a lowland tropical rainforest, a cloud forest, and a carnivorous plant bog. Yes, a carnivorous plant bog. It was so interesting to see this wet tropical environment with all these rare plants. There was a corpse flower. There was cinnamon plant, the cinnamon plant. There was vanilla plant. There was a bunch of orchids. Oh, there was even a rattan plant where you make rattan trees, or rattan furniture from, excuse me. And then one of the most interesting plants that I saw there was this one that was, they called it a prized specimen, but the interesting thing was the flowers look like these little Dr. Seuss puffballs of orange, and I just thought it was so interesting, and I was so happy to be able to see it bloom. So the conservatory was very, very interesting. It was very well done, and my girls were lost in there. I had to go find them and tell them it was time to go home. So we had an absolutely wonderful trip at the Huntington Botanical Garden. I wish I had more time to spend there. There was so much more to explore, but I can consider this my first of many trips there. So if you are in town in the Los Angeles area, try and make it a stop on your trip, or if you're local, you are so lucky. It is a beautiful botanical garden to see. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a chance to get in your garden today.